My name is Bhav, and for those of you who don't know me, for the first 22 years of my life, I could not speak. Not reliably, not freely, not like myself. Certainly not the way that I spoke in my own home when no one was around me. My basic greetings, something as simple as, "How are you doing?" came out as, "How are you doing?" Each conversation felt like an exhausting battle. Every social situation was a minefield. I watched people around me move through life effortlessly, forming friendships, joining groups, taking opportunities, while I felt locked out of my own personality that I knew existed, but had not been uncovered. And that was perhaps the saddest part of it all. Deep down, I knew that I was naturally charismatic. I wanted to be expressive, warm, funny, energetic, but my speech trapped all of that inside. The last time I spoke to WSSA, I shared how that had started to change. Today, I want to tell you what's happened since, because the transformation has been profound. For the past several months, I've been in the hospital every day as a medical student, rotating through pediatrics, emergency medicine, surgery, ophthalmology, and anesthesia. These rotations demand constant communication. Every single day, I'm expected to lead, present patients, guide rounds, update attending or senior physicians, explain complex medical diagnoses to families in distress and fear, and comfort people in their most vulnerable moments. These situations used to terrify me. I would spend hours of each day as a child growing up just thinking, what would medical school be like not being able to speak? It used to ruin my entire day, and it would lead to moments over and over again where my speech would collapse. But now I show up with calmness, consistency, and natural fluency. I can spend hours listening to patients, truly listening, and respond with empathy, clarity, and warmth. Before, that level of presence simply wasn't possible. I was always managing fear, managing tension, feeling my jaw and mouth locking up, and so painful, and managing anticipation. Now, I'm here speaking as myself, and that freedom is priceless. At the same time, my life outside the hospital has expanded in ways I never imagined. I've been working with the brilliant Coach Lee and Ambassador Siebert on researching and proving the efficacy of our methods. Along with Coach Lee, I recently interviewed with CNN host Michael Smerconish to share this work with a national audience, and we have many more interviews coming up. Next year, I'll be starting business school, a place where communication defines leadership. I'll be organizing teams, pitching ideas, debating solutions, and leading projects. And for the first time in my life, I feel genuinely excited for all of it because I trust my voice completely. Speech gives me a more meaningful life. It lets me show up more fully and makes me want to seize every moment. Now, I want to add some context onto all of this success, all of which I attribute to Coach Lee by sharing the basic neuroscience principles behind the method. As someone who studied neuroscience back in college, the deeper I've gone into this journey, the more I've realized something very profound that this program, as much as we may think it's magic, really isn't. It's well-established principles of neuroscience. Contrary to what the stuttering therapists and speech therapy community broadly argues, stuttering is actually not a vocal or genetic or inborn problem. It's not an issue with the diaphragm or with the mouth or the tongue, even though I've seen countless speech programs based off of those organs specifically. It isn't a speech cord defect. You look at Noah Sam, one of the best singers I've known. I promise you, his vocal cords work perfectly fine. Stuttering is a conditioned brain loop built over years of anticipation and fear. And I want to walk you through how it works. Number one, the threat loop of anticipatory stuttering. When a feared word approaches, a specific neural sequence fires. The amygdala flags it as a threat. This triggers motor tension in the motor cortex. That tension disrupts speech timing in the basal ganglia, the system that actually coordinates our smooth motor sequences. And that disruption manifests either as a block or as a repetition. So it's a cycle: fear, tension, mistiming, block, or repetition, and more fear. And that happens over and over again, like a reflex. It's no different from when I touch my hand onto a hot stove. I have an automatically encoded reflex. Now, number two, why do Lee's crutches work? Because they engage us in motor pattern reprogramming. Crutches interrupt the old neural pathway at the exact moment that the brain starts to stutter, whether it's extreme pronunciation, as it was for me, soft voice, whispering, linking, singing, melody, humming. The effect is the same for all of these. You give your brain a new safe motor plan, a new first movement that bypasses the fear tension cycle. It, literally speaking, takes your neurons' attention off of that well-conditioned reflex and gives it something new. And over thousands of reps, your brain rewires and says, "This is how we start speaking now." The old pattern weakens. It, as in the words of the famed John Harrison, it just dies. Weakens from lack of use, and that's called in neuroscience classic Hebbian learning. Now, number three, why does mind training work? Because there's an emotional circuit that's a part of this as well, and we have to rewire that. As I was saying, stuttering is largely, if not exclusively, fear conditioning. But daily mind training rewires the limbic system, especially the amygdala, which I was speaking about earlier. Your brain relearns that speech is not dangerous, pressure is actually fun rather than being a threat, and silence is not failure. And this is the same mechanism used in treating any other phobia and trauma reflexes. I'm about to start on my psychiatry rotation in the hospital, and so much of what I'll be doing is the exact same phobia, fear, retraining approach that Lee has adopted into speech, but for other issues like OCD and generalized anxiety disorder. Number four, why does pressure zone climbing work? Exposure is the fastest way to rewire the brain. You start in low pressure and then you reach medium and high, but you succeed at each step. If you don't succeed at each step, you can't successfully move on to the next one. You're literally in this process training that amygdala, which is part of your emotional or limbic system, to stop reacting. You're giving permission to your prefrontal cortex to stay in control, and you're showing the basal ganglia that it's possible to run new motor plans even under stress. This is how athletes train for elite performance, and speech is no different. And what you find is that stress actually becomes fun. There's a well-documented effect of stress where you need some level of stress hormones to actually be successful. And with stuttering, you've unfortunately got on the other end of that stress hormone response where it's in overdrive. But if you can modulate that down to just a little bit lower, you still keep those stress hormones, but you are actually excited. And now I view the highest of high pressure situations as fun. In fact, I seek them out every single day. Number five, why does automatic fluency emerge? This is where I'm at, and this is where Lee has been for countless decades. Proceduralization. At first, the crutches feel effortful. They feel intentional. You have to think about them the whole day. You are almost holding yourself accountable if you don't do it. But after enough time, they feel natural and they become subconscious. The anticipation itself fades because your brain now defaults to its fluent motor plan. And this is exactly what happened to me with extreme pronunciation. Extreme pronunciation made me the most articulate, confident, and effective speaker I had ever been. It let me break past every single block, not by fighting the block, but by speaking through it with exaggerated clarity and intention. In the beginning, it was awkward and effortful. I was always wondering, are other people seeing me moving my mouth this wide? But as I practiced, I learned to deploy it just before every anticipated block. What happened is the anticipation itself started to fade. I no longer even thought of words, and my brain started to use the crutch automatically without me even noticing. Now I'll watch videos of me speaking and I'll actually see myself randomly using extreme pronunciation, but I wasn't even aware in that moment that I had done so. Today, I feel no pressure when I speak, not in the hospital, not with senior physicians, not with families, not in emergencies, not on camera like I'm here, and not on stage. Extreme pronunciation became my gateway to effortless fluency. So if you're early in this journey, here's what I want to leave you with. Experiment relentlessly. Find your crutch and practice it until it becomes part of you. We have so many options: linking, extreme pronunciation, singing. You just have to choose one and climb your pressure zones. Show up when it's uncomfortable, especially, in fact, especially when it's uncomfortable, and trust that your brain will rewire. Fluency isn't luck, it's not magic, it's not a miracle. It's a well designed process, a carefully architected one, a process that works if you stay with it. So today, I stand here not as someone fighting for his voice, but as someone using it and giving it back to others fully in medicine, in leadership, and in life. Thank you, Coach Lee. Thank you to all of the speech therapists here, including my good friend Danny, who spent hours with me on the phone for the last year. Thank you, Ambassador Siebert. Thank you to everyone at WSSA. And thank you all for being here and believing in what's possible.